And I think where we left off was Sam saying, you can still be a play acting spy, you're not the real Strider. How do we know you're the real Strider? And Strider says, you don't. And if I was a play acting spy, I could kill you now and take the ring. Right? But he says, I am. And Frodo makes a comment about, I kind of thought that if you were really one of Sauron's spies, you would somehow look fairer and feel fouler. That is, you'd be pretty to the eyes, and yet I'd get the willies about you. Okay? And Aragorn goes, Strider, says, oh, I get it. So I seem foul, but feel fair. Why does he say that? That's Tolkien giving us an idea of how he appears.
I think we did maybe the end of one.
Honestly?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm confusing you with my Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. So we got to the end of Forge of Bruinen. Cool. Did we talk at all about many meetings?
We're at the beginning of chapter 2 of the second book.
Council, how the when did that happen? Okay, I did not move my note. That's why. Beginning of Council of Elrond. Oh, that makes things a lot better. Thank you. I can take a deeper breath. Because we might actually even finish Fellowship of the Ring today. Slim hope, but not none. So 240, we see several of the people who are at the Council of Elrond. I'm simply for time's sake, I'm not going to go through and name them, other than those that are going to speak. We're going to see, obviously, we're going to see Gandalf speak. We're going to see Legolas speak. We're going to see Gimli and or Glóin speak. Boromir is going to speak. Strider's going to speak. Elrond's going to speak. And a couple of others who we won't. Bilbo's going to jump up and speak. So page 242. Glóin tells them why he has come from the Lonely Mountain. The Lonely Mountain, the Lonely Mountain, the home of the dwarves. He says, we've received emissaries from Sauron, and Sauron, fancies a mere trifle, a little ring. And do you have any word about it? And if you do, maybe Sauron will return to the dwarves the 7 dwarf rings. Okay? And they're like, we'll get back to you on that. Glóin goes to Rivendell to find out, how do we respond? Okay? And Elrond says, top of 242, you have done well to come. You will hear today all that you need in order to understand the purposes of the enemy. There is naught that you can do other than to resist, with hope or without it, but you do not stand alone. Excuse me. You will learn that your trouble is but part of the trouble of all the Western world. See, it's that kind of language that led some readers to assume the War of the Ring is merely the fictional retelling of the real war, Second World War, which was West against the East, for the most part. There's some problems with that construction, which is why it doesn't work. So, the ring. What shall we do with the ring? The least of rings, the trifle that Sauron fancies. That is the doom that we must deem. Tolkien uses that word doom and another form of it, deem, there, because it's going to come up later in the little poem that Boromir will recite to them. Okay? That is the doom, the judgment. That's what doom means. That we must deem. You've all heard of the phrase doomsday. Okay? It's judgment day. All right? That is the judgment that we must judge. Notice, we are the ones who will decide what's going to happen to all of Middle-earth. That is the purpose for which you are called hither. Purpose. Okay? You've been brought here, you've been called here to determine one thing. That is to fulfill one purpose. Called, I say, but I didn't call you. So if they've been called, just like if Bilbo was meant to have the ring, what? Somebody did the calling. Somebody put it in their hearts and minds. Make your way to Rivendell. or something, let's say. I didn't call you, strangers from distant lands. Do you think Elrond knew who Boromir was before Boromir showed up? He probably knew about the steward of Gondor and that he had 2 sons, etc. But no, he'd never met him. You have come and are here met in this very nick of time. Think what that word that phrase nick of time means. What's a nick? It's a pinprick. It's knife's edge. Right? By chance as it may seem. Why as it may seem? What does that verb seem always mean? What kind of verb is it? It's what's called a subjunctive. Okay? It indicates, introduces a condition contrary to fact. I'm just using this because it's an outlandish example, okay? Don't anybody get offended. Donald Trump seems to be the most humble person on earth. Nobody would say that because it's a condition contrary to fact, okay? Kim Kardashian seems like a very virtuous, matronly woman. Probably not, because you can pull up Kim Kardashian on right now and see things that aren't virtuous or matronly, okay? It always indicates that what's going to come after, don't believe your eyes, right? So, by chance, as it may, he's saying it's not chance, folks. It's not chance that Golan and Gimli came all the way from the Lonely Mountain. It's not chance that Boromir's here. It's not chance that Bilbo made his way here, or that Frodo made his way here, and such. Or that Erestor in Galdor from the Great Havens has come. Yet it is not so. Believe, rather, that it is so ordered. This is how things have been arranged, that we who sit here and none other must now find counsel for the peril of the world. He doesn't say it, and it's never said. Well, take that back. It's alluded to. Who's the none other referred to? Any of you read the Silmarillion? No Tolkien nerds in this class. Okay. My previous class, I've got a guy who sits over here. He's just spouting stuff up. And then I have another guy who sits here and has his computer open. He's on Google. So I'll ask him a question. And I'm like, shh. I don't want that kind of an answer, kind of a thing. Okay? So, the none other, he's referring to the gods who live in what's called Valinor, or what Gandalf referred to when he talked about Glorfindel living presently, simultaneously in the blessed realm and in this realm, which I don't think we mentioned. How can you be simultaneously in 2 places? Basic law of physics, which cannot be violated, even in fantasy literature, is that you can't be in 2 places at one time. So how can it be in 2 places at one time? They're not separate places. This is, you could call the spiritual or unseen. This would be better to be on top. Reality. And over here in Middle Earth, it's the physical reality. But for an elf like Glorfindel, it's all the same. Blow your mind. Book 5, Harry Potter, Harry comes to the same realization. That the world he inhabits is the exact same damn thing. It's got a spiritual / unseen component, which is Hogwarts, and the physical component. And the person who opens his eyes to that is what really blows his mind. Okay? So, he says, the gods, Manwe, Elbrith, Gilthonio, whose name we hear repeatedly, okay, they're not going to come save us. This is not a Greek tragedy. We are not going to get a Machina. We're not going to get a God from the machine. This is not a 1930s Cowboys and Indian movie where when the Indians are about to slaughter all the, all the settlers, the cavalry comes riding over the hill. So he says, now we have to have a long talk. Things are going to be talked about openly that haven't been talked about for years. Okay? So who starts? Who gets to talk first? Why? That part's debatable. He's the oldest. It's his house. This is his place. Plus, his memory, in a sense, is the fullest. Okay? I just did a very, very quick calculation. Elrond is at least, what was the number? Either 5,700 or 4,000. He's at least 5,000 years old. Okay? First time he's mentioned in the chronology, the annals of the years, in the back. It's in the year, I think, something like 1658 of the Second Age. Okay? But his memory goes back to the First Age. So there's at least 1658 years there, and then you go on, and there's a bunch more, and then a bunch more in the Third Age. So he talks about what he remembers, and Frodo's like, whoa, time out. What do you mean? What do you mean you remember? I thought the fall of Gil-galad, page 243, was a long age ago. All right, so it was. But my memory reaches back even to the elder days, the First Age. And he tells us, Eärendil, and I'm pronouncing that name wrong, so all of you on YouTube, shut up. He says, so let's go. Elrond, he says, Eärendil was my sire, who was born in Gondolin before its fall. My mother was Elwing, daughter of Dior, son of, I'll put that up there. Anybody? What's the next name? Luthien Tinuvial and Beren the Man. Remember Aragorn sang the song about Luthien Tinuvial? Right? Oh, by the way, he's also descended from them. Aragorn also descends from these two, right? Beren and Luthien's father was Thingol the elf and Melian, who is a Maya, okay? One of the what is called Maiar. The gods are the Valar and the Maiar. The Valar are the top gods. They're the Olympian, those who actually live in Olympus, on Mount Olympus. Zeus, Hera, etc. Okay? The Maiar are the lesser gods. Her mother was a goddess, in other words. All right? So, he says, I was the herald of Gil-galad. I was there when Isildur cut the ring off Sauron's finger. I counseled Isildur to destroy it. But he had to say no. We did a little, where he quotes Isildur. It says, Wergild for my father and brother and such. Okay? And then he talks about the battle at the Gladden Fields when Isildur was slain. Why? Gandalf already told us. The ring slipped off his finger at the most inopportune time or the most opportune time. Inopportune for Isildur, opportune for the ring and ultimately Sauron. Okay? So, he goes on and he talks about the lords of, Minas Tirith are still fighting on, etc., etc. But he says, the ring passed on out of knowledge. That is, the lords of Minas Tirith were fighting back then, and they still are. Joe Biden the other day talked about the forever war. Doesn't have an idea what the forever. This is a war that's been going on for thousands of years. if you want to talk about the forever war, it's the Israelis and the Arabs, not the Palestinians. Palestinians are just Arabs, okay, who originally lived in part of Palestine, also Jordan, moved back and forth. So he mentions Gondor, and Boromir stands up. Why? Them's my folk you're talking about there. So he says, give me leave. First to say more of Gondor. So what does he do? He says, the blood of Numenor isn't entirely spent in Gondor. What do you mean by the blood of Numenor? What are called the men of Western Essa. Who's that? Where have we heard that before? When Tom Bombadil empties the barrel of the Barrow Wight who captured, Frodo, Merry, Sam, and Pippin, and he pulls out those swords and gives each of them one, daggers, and gives each of them one, he says these were forged by the men of Western Essa. Western Essa is just another word for Numenor. If I remember correctly, Numenor is more of like the Elvish word for it, and Western Essa is like the Mannish word for it. Okay? So he says, we still have some of that blood, and we're still fighting. And then he says, top of 246, in this evil hour, I have come on an errand across many dangerous leagues to Elrond. 110 days I journeyed all by myself. Well, why the preface to the really important stuff? I'm tough. I did this all on my own. No help. 110 days. Okay? And what he recounts to them is that his brother had a dream. In fact, his brother had the dream multiple times. And then the dream came once to me. So Faramir keeps having this dream. It's almost like the dream is saying, hello, wake up. But it comes to Boromir. So why is Boromir the one that goes north instead of Faramir? It's obviously intended for Faramir. Because Daddy said so. And because Boromir volunteered. Right? So, he recounts the voice and the poem in the dream. Seek for the sword that was broken in Imladris it dwells. There shall be counsels taken stronger than Morgul spells. There shall be shown a token that doom is near at hand, for Isildur's bane shall awaken, and the heavenly fort shall stand. And he's like, we don't have a clue what this means. What are you talking about? And Aragorn stands up and says, here's the sword that was broken. And he puts the shards of Narsil on the table. What is that? Mythologically for us, for our world. It's like Excalibur. Okay? If you assume for a moment the Arthur myth, had some evidence of truth or reality, and somebody discovered Excalibur, runic, inscription, I was made for Arthur, by Merlin, Lady of the Lake. Oh, it would blow our minds. And who are you, and what do you have to do with the ring? Excuse me, with Minas Tirith, Boromir asks. And what he really means, why do you have that? Who comes to his defense? Elrond does. Notice it's kind of different in the film. In the film version, Elrond and Aragorn have a not so great relationship. Right? That's not that way here. He is Aragorn, son of Arathorn. And he is descended through many fathers from Isildur, Elendil's son of Minas Ithil. What has Elrond just told Boromir? Because Boromir is a descendant or a resident, let's say, of Minas Ithil. Not literally, okay? He's a Númenórean. Also, he descends from the Númenóreans, just like Aragorn does. Aragorn descends from I hate to use this language, because it's very British and classist, a higher line, a purer line. Okay? He's Aragorn, who, if things work out well, will be the future king of Gondor. There hasn't been a king in Gondor for over 1,000 years. Boromir's father is steward of Gondor. He rules in place of the king. So what happens when his father Denethor dies? Boromir will rule in his place as long as the king doesn't return. So, threat to my power. He is the chief of the Dunedain in the north, and few are now left of that folk. Frodo, then it's yours. The ring belongs to you, you know. Kind of. And Gandalf says, come on, Frodo, stand up, bring it out. Pull out the ring. Show everybody. Show Isildur's band. So he holds it up. And what does Boromir do? We're told he looks at it and his eyes glint as he gazes. I usually say in this class, every time somebody's eyes glint, it's always bad. Found the other day, there's one exception. It's Tom Bombadil. When Frodo asked, who are you, master? Tom goes, hey, what's that? And his eyes glint. Okay? But there's not anything, there's no ill intent there when he does that. Every other time, when somebody's eyes glint, they're either angry or there's ill intent. Gandalf's eyes glint when Bilbo accuses him of wanting the ring. No, he has right to glint his eyes at that moment, you know. So, Boromir says, is then the doom of Minas Tirith come at last? How is he understanding the word doom? Judgment, destruction, the end. And Aragorn kind of says, stop. You got to learn to read/interpret better, Boromir. It did not say the doom of Minas Tirith. It said, then doom is near at hand. Then judgment is near at hand. Notice it doesn't say who/what will be judged. Doom and great deeds are indeed at hand, for the sword that was broken is the sword of Elendil that broke beneath him when he fell. It's been treasured, blah, blah, blah. Do you want the house of Elendil to return to the land of Gondor? That is, future king asking future steward, do you want the kingship to return and for the stewardship to be pushed aside? I wasn't here to seek any boon, any reward, any real kind of, bonus. He said, but if Excalibur could return, think you're Boris Johnson, Prime Minister of England today, because, Queen doesn't matter. And somebody shows up and says, I could bring Excalibur to you. Even with all the nuclear weapons and all that kind of stuff we have. But not only I could bring Excalibur to you, but I am a literal descendant of Arthur. Okay, first of all, what's going to happen? The men with the white coats are going to come and, you're going to be escorted off. Because you can identify as a lot of different things, right? But you can't identify as King Arthur or Jesus or something like that because the men in the white coats will come and get you. So, what's he saying? I can bring the most powerful weapon there is. Okay? And that's when Bilbo jumps up, reads his little poem. Aragorn, kind of smiles at Bilbo, like, sit down. And then he turns to Boromir and says, I forgive your doubt. Why? I am only the heir of Isildur and Elendil. I'm not them. And he says, and I don't look like their images carved in the hall of Denethor. What's that telling us? I've been there. Boromir may not know it, may not remember it. Probably because he wasn't alive then. But then he goes on and says, oh, you want to talk about your long journey? You traveled for 110 days by yourself? Everybody, give him a hand there. I have been, he says, to Harad. Okay. And I've been to the north. I've crossed many mountains, many rivers, trod many plains, even, page 248, even into the far countries of Rune and Harad where the stars are strange. Harad, the southernmost point on the map that's in your book of Middle Earth. Rune, the easternmost point. So, all the way down here, and all the way over here, and he says, in Boromir, your travels are like right there. Don't talk to me about long journeys. By yourself. Okay? But then he goes on and says, but where, if I was going to spend my time where I love, it'd be in the north. And then he talks to us about people who just call him a ranger. Bottom of 248. Yet less thanks have we than you. We riders of the north, we rangers of the north. He says, you guys in Gondor, man, people kind of think of you like the United States, right? The world's policeman. If the United States pulls back, the world's going to go to hell in a handbasket. He says, that's what Gondor is. But we're also doing something too. Listen to what he says. Travelers scowl at us. Countrymen give us scornful names. Strider. I am to one fat man who lives within a day's march of foes that would freeze his heart or lay his little town in ruin. If he were not guarded ceaselessly. Who's he talking about? Barlaam Butterbur, proprietor of the Prancing Pony. Right? And notice what he says there. Yet we would not have it otherwise. We would not have the Barlaam and Butterburs of the north know that death is just beyond their reach or just beyond their boundaries. He says, if simple folk are free from care and fear, simple they will be. And it's almost like he's defining. To be a simple people means you are free from care, worries, and fear. See, care, worries can be kind of amorphous. You don't have anything that you're specifically worried about. Fear means there's an object. Right? A lot of people, maybe worry, let's say, about COVID. What's the real fear? It's when you're around somebody that really has it. Because we're told, you can't really tell if somebody has it. So it becomes a little bit amorphous. But if you're sitting next to somebody and they're sitting there, coughing, spitting up, move. Right? Simple they will be. They will stay simple. And we must be secret to keep them so. What? Why? Why? Keep the we must be secret part out for a moment. Why keep them so? What do we tend to think in our enlightened 21st century? Knowledge is what? Power. Knowledge is everything. Why, after all, seemingly, does our government want everybody to have I was going to say high school diploma, shows my age, a college diploma? Because it confers knowledge. Bullshit. It does not confer that, nor does it reveal that. What does it really show? You can do certain things. I'll put it bluntly and basically. You know how to jump through hoops. Those hoops are called, this class, writing class, other gen ed, and then the classes of your majors. Sometimes the hoops are big, sometimes they get really small. The more and more higher education you get, the smaller and smaller the hoops get. So that when you get a PhD, you got to write a dissertation, or you have to do if you're a chemist or something, you have to do a major research project. Well, that hoop gets really, really small to jump through, hard, difficult. Right? He says, we must be secret to keep them simple and free. Because if they know what we're doing, then what will they start to do? why are they out there? Why are these guys standing sentinel, around us? Better that they don't know. That they live their lives according to what they understand as real. Hermione's going to deal with this kind of issue in the Harry Potter novels. When she reaches this epiphany one morning, she discovers there aren't cooks and cleaners, employees at Hogwarts. Who does all the cooking and cleaning? The house elves, who are enslaved. And Hermione, being the good Amnesty International wannabe that she is, because she's kind of modeled on J.K. Rowling, who worked for Amnesty International, she decides what? I've got to set the house elves free. How does she think she can accomplish that? Anybody know? I won't go into a lot. Start spew. Like vomit. The Society for the Protection of Elvish Welfare, any do-gooder society in Britain for the last 200 years always began with Society for the Protection, cats and dogs, animals, pick your, whatever. What must she do, though? She has to get the elves to think what?
That's wrong.
What's wrong?
That they're enslaved.
That they're enslaved. She's got to get them to think that their lives suck. Rowling eventually drops this whole idea. Why? I think it's because ultimately she couldn't intellectually work it out so that this works. Because it's almost like, if Stephen King talks about writing a novel, he throws characters into a situation and then just sits back and watches, sees what they do. And I think she kind of does that in what do the elves do? They don't go along with her. They don't think that their lives suck, that their lives are horrible. Okay? So, Strider finishes, and Bilbo tells his version of the tale. All right? Legolas shows up, or Legolas mentions, sorry, we let Gollum go. We don't like seeing anything caged. And Glóin says, you weren't so nice to us. Elements of The Hobbit. And they have a little small argument. Okay? Which in the film version gets blown into the big thing of the whole Council of Elrond. People are yelling at each other. Gimli whips out an axe and tries to, destroy the whole 9 yards. All right? So, Aragorn speaks some, and then Gandalf speaks. And Gandalf talks a little bit about the rings of power and such, and about the history of the ring, and he says, and I'm the only one who's had the temerity, the wherewithal to cast it in fire to see what it says on it. And here's what I read, page 254. Ashnaz durba tulak, ashnaz gimba tulak, ashnaz thlaka tulak, agburzum ishi krimpatul. And, the lights dim. Cue the special effects. Lights dim. Maybe there's a crack of thunder outside, Elrond's not happy. That's like every other word is a 4-letter curse word. Okay? And he says, nobody's ever dared utter that language here before. And Gandalf says, let's hope we don't. Let's hope we don't hear it anymore. It's very Germanic, by the way. So what they read, and that's when Legolas interrupts. So, Gandalf then gives an account of his dreams. And I know I don't have, got to do it. And he talks about being captured by Saruman. Okay, there are 5 wizards. Saruman the White, Gandalf the Gray, Radagast the Brown, 2 others, one of which is referred to by his blue hat or blue cloak, and the other one we hear nothing about. All right. So Radagast gives Gandalf a message. Gandalf goes to Saruman. Saruman invites him up. Gandalf goes up, And Saruman says, I've got you. Bottom of 258, top of 259. They're talking about the ring, they're talking about the 9 or abroad, that is the Black Riders. And Saruman says, now you're going to rest from your journeys. Why? For I am Saruman the Wise, Saruman Ringmaker, Saruman of many colors. See, Saruman Ringmaker, that's the giveaway. Only one other person really is the Ringmaker, Sauron. Gandalf. I looked and I saw his cloak kind of shimmered. I liked white better. White. It serves as a beginning. The white cloth may be dyed, the white page can be overwritten, the white light can be broken, in which case it is no longer white. And he who breaks the thing to find out what it is has left the path of wisdom. That is a passage, a line, that kind of describes, in one sense, this isn't too strong to say it this way. Everything Tolkien wrote in his famous address, Beowulf, the Monsters, and the Critics. In that address that he delivered in 1936, later published as an essay, Tolkien says all previous critics have looked at Beowulf, the Old English poem, wrongly. They've looked at it as a tower. Okay? Who didn't understand it was a tower, so they took it apart to figure out what it was. And he says, and what are they left with? Bits of stone lying all around. Now, how did they do that? Because they looked at Beowulf to see what was important in it, and what they thought was important in it was things like social mores and customs, gift giving, beer drinking, swords and names on swords, and all that kind of stuff. Well, if you know the Old English poem Beowulf, what's it really about? Beowulf's fight with Grendel, fight with Grendel's mother, and fight with the dragon. In other words, 3 monsters. They all treated the monsters as peripheral. Tolkien said, nope, monsters are the center. But because they didn't see that, they tried to take it apart. And thus they ended up with nothing. If you take something apart to figure out what it is, he says you've left the path of wisdom. Okay? So, Saruman says, come teach me. And what does he offer Gandalf? The other day I had rings in my pocket because I was taking them to get them sized. He says, Gandalf, join with me, and perhaps we can take this one ring and do what? We can rule together. Yes?
When he calls himself Saruman the Ringmaker, what ring or rings is he referring to?
None that are named. Okay? He's probably alluding to, he's been doing research in the making of rings. And not just in, getting a piece of metal and sticking it around the round horn of a anvil kind of thing. Talking about the lore of how Sauron made his rings, how the elves made their rings because they made theirs before Sauron kind of made his, that kind of thing. Okay? He's implying, I'm still working on it. I'm gonna make this. Okay? What's the problem with his offer to Gandalf? That Gandalf clearly sees. Rings are made for what? One finger at a time. Okay? He says, okay. But maybe we can join with that power. And we can, over time, turn it to our purposes. In other words, we might need to, here's an example. We might need to align ourselves with Stalin, Joseph Stalin. Now, and maybe we can turn him our way later. Didn't happen, by the way. We did align ourselves with Stalin. Why? To help defeat Hitler. Stalin opened up the Eastern Front. Hitler now had to divide his forces. That's largely, big part of why we ended up victorious in Europe in World War II. Okay? But this also relates to a thing I had written up here. MFN. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, Congress every year had to pass what's called Most Favored Nation trading status. It still does for some nations. Okay? But throughout the 80s and 90s, The really big contentious battle every year in Congress was over MFN for China. See, once Nixon went to China and opened up China, and only Nixon could go to China because Nixon was the staunch anti-communist. And if Nixon could go to China and kind of open it up, then, that means all kinds of things can happen. Well, once China started moving towards a quasi-capitalist society, that opened up a market, So we wanted to be there because they were buying all kinds of stuff from us. Most favored nation kept that market open without huge tariffs and things like that. Right? Huge battle. And then Tiananmen Square happened in 1989, and an awful lot of people wanted to shut it down. Why? Because part of the idea behind most favored nation was that maybe we could turn China away from its ideology, or at the very least, at least not to be so horrible to its citizens. If you don't know much about China, just look up China in the 1960s and 70s. Look up the Cultural Revolution. When Mao put millions to death, I'd be gone. Automatically, I would be gone. Because I'm a university professor. Most of you would also be gone. Okay? Somebody like me was turned into a rice farmer, if I was allowed to live. Okay? A lot of you would join me in the rice fields, if you were allowed to live. All right? So, he's saying, if we go along with him, we can gradually get us like, you're a damn fool. That'll never work. So he says, no, what's your third option? You can rot away up here. So Gandalf gets rescued. And they bring up the possibility, this is one of my other classes. So they keep talking, what are we going to do? Because now they've reached the point. We've got Isildur's Bane. We've got the ring, the one ring of power that Sauron wants. What do? Top of 265. There was silence. And he's like, oh man, this sucks. We could have really used Saruman. He was the leader, by the way, also, some debate about this, of that group that Gandalf calls the Wise, or the White Council. Saruman, Elrond, Galadriel, Gandalf, possibly a couple others. So, they talk about the Barrow-wights, Elrond does, and he says, Bombadil, middle of page 265. If that is indeed who I think it is, we called him Eärwen ben Adar, which is really weird. Because Ben hyphen, anybody know what language that comes from? Like in the New Testament, Simon bar Jonah. Simon, son of Jonah. Bar means son of. It's Hebrew. Now I know the Tolkien linguists will say, no, Tolkien in his own invented languages came up for a thing for that. Well, that's true, he did. But he gets it ultimately from Hebrew, right? Eärwen ben Adar. And Adar refers to earth, son of the earth, right? So they talk about him. And Elrond says, shoot, I should have summoned him to this council. Now that kind of negates what Elrond said earlier, that he didn't summon anybody. But he didn't. He's saying, if I remembered him, I would have told him we were having this. Gandalf, he wouldn't have come. Eristor, well, couldn't we still send a message to him? I mean, he's got a power even over the ring. Because Frodo told his part of the story. Gandalf, no. Say rather, the ring has no power over him. Well, isn't that the same thing? He is his own master. Now he is withdrawn into a little land within bounds that he has set, though none can see them, waiting perhaps for a change of days, and he will not step beyond them. What did Tom do when he set the hobbits on the right road? He went to the boundaries of his land and said, take one step and put on that road. You'll see Bree just over the hill. Okay? So, they said, can we send the ring to him? He'll keep it. Gandalf. Nope. He might if we all ask him, but he'd probably lose it. Okay? So, Galdor says, is there anybody here who has the strength to wield the ring? Elrond, 266. Not me. Nor have they. Glorfindel. Well, if the ring cannot be kept from him forever by strength, we've got two options. Send it over the sea to the blessed realm, to the gods, or destroy it. Elrond. Gandalf's already revealed we can't destroy it. They who dwell beyond the sea would not receive it. Okay? Go back to what he said at the beginning of his address opening the council. It's up to us to solve the problem, nobody else. For good or ill, it belongs to Middle Earth. Glorfindel. Okay, then let's throw it into the ocean. Take a research vessel, go out over the Mariana Strait, deepest spot on the planet, and drop it. Gandalf won't be safe forever. The tides will keep going and it'll eventually wash up. He says, no, we should seek a final end of this menace, even if we do not hope to make one. We should seek its destruction, even if we fail in destroying it. All right? Aristor, top of 267. Okay, notice they're all thinking logically, rationally. So, Glorfindel said there's two courses to take. To hide the ring forever or to unmake it. Both are beyond our power. Who will read this riddle? Who will advise us? Who will answer this riddle? Elrond. Nobody here. Right? At least none can foretell what will come to pass. He says, the ring must be shunned. It will, none can foretell what will come to pass if we take this road or that, but it seems to me now clear which is the road we must take. The westward road seems easiest, meaning to the sea, Valinor must be shunned. It will be watched. Too often the elves have fled that way. Now at this last, we must take a hard road, a road unforeseen. There lies our hope, if hope it will be, to walk in the Merrill to Mordor. We must send the ring to the fire. In other words, we've got to send the ring to the very place we don't want the ring to go, into Mordor. Okay? Why? The only thing to do with it is destroy it. Gandalf already told Frodo where that could happen. He said that back in the shadow of the past. And notice, after he says that, what does everybody else in the council do? They look down. If you ever have an opportunity in your chosen field of employment to be in a committee, first, don't take the opportunity. Second, if you're forced, don't look down in a way when somebody has to be chosen to be, the leader of the committee or whatever. Because there will be somebody who doesn't look down, and that person will propose that somebody else does. So, come up with a reason why you can't chair the committee. Who wants to volunteer to take this to Satan? Yeah. So finally, Frodo speaks. Alas, Elrond says, we can't use the ring. We know that all too well. It belongs to Sauron. It was made by him alone. It is altogether evil. Notwithstanding what some might think, guns aren't inherently evil. A spear is not inherently evil. This is entirely. There's no good about it. He says, Its strength, Boromir, in response to Boromir, is too great for anyone. Because Boromir says, why don't we use the ring? Give it to us strong men and we'll ride to victory. What does Elrond say about everything that happens as a result of the ring? Louder? Well, the ring corrupts the individuals wielding it. Well, what about every good that comes as a result of the ring? As a friend of mine, once put it, her family's kind of dark. Every silver lining has what? A black cloud behind it. We're kind of taught, look for the silver lining and everything. Her point was, yeah, but behind that silver lining, there's always darkness. Okay? Cue the Simon and Garfunkel song. For nothing is evil in the beginning, even Sauron was not so. But the ring is, because Sauron put his powers into it. Right? The ring should be destroyed. As long as it is in the world, it will be a danger even to the wise. That is, it will tempt even us. Okay? Why wasn't Sauron evil in the beginning? Because Sauron is one of those. He's a Maya. Okay? So Bilbo says, they keep talking. Gandalf says, in response to Glorfindel says, to take the ring and try to destroy it, that's foolishness. There is no chance. Gandalf 269. Despair or folly? Despair, des pace, Latin, des out of, away from, lacking, if you want, space, hope. To have despair means you don't have 99% despair. Despair means you have no hope. That's what you feel the moment you pull the trigger. Okay? The moment you take the pills, the moment you slash the wrist, etc. That's what the person who commits suicide, at that moment, nothing can help. Okay? Gandalf says, despair or folly? It's not despair. Why? Despair is only for those who see the end beyond all doubt. We do not. Beyond all doubt. Not beyond a reasonable doubt. This is not a court of law. All doubt means what? We will lose. Period. He says, no. It's wisdom to recognize necessity. What's necessity? It's when something forces your hand. It's when you have no other choice. There's no options, okay, other than to respond. When all other courses have been weighed, though as folly it may appear to those who cling to false hope. The only measure, he's talking about Sauron now, the only measure he knows is desire. Desire for power. Okay? Course theme. And so he judges all hearts. What does Sauron think a Gandalf will do if he comes near the ring? He will use it. He will want it. What does he think an Elrond will do? He will want it. A Glorfindel, he will want it. A Galadriel, he will want it. Why? Because he sees everybody through his own lenses. He sees everybody as mirror, go back to the whole escape recovery thing, more recovery. He sees everybody as an extension of him and his desires and how he views the world. Okay? And Gandalf is saying, and that will be our strength against him. Into his heart the thought will not enter that any will refuse it. That having the ring we may seek to destroy it. If we seek this, we'll put him out of all reckoning. That is, this will never enter his mind. Okay? So, Bilbo says, okay, I'll do it. They're like, shut up, Bilbo. Frodo finally stands up, 270. I will take the ring, though I do not know the way. I do not know the way is a sentence pregnant with meaning, let's say. I mean, like, and more than one child. This sentence just resonates. I do not know the way. I do not know the literal, show me the map. It also means, but I don't know how. I'll do it, but it's a wing and a prayer kind of a thing. And Elrond says, if I understand aright all that I have heard, I think that this task is appointed for you, Frodo. And if you do not find a way, no one will. This is the hour of the Shire folk, when they arise from their quiet fields to shake the towers and councils of the great. What does he not say that Kate Blanchett's Galadriel voice says in the film? Oh, it's the time for the little people to do things, to shake the... In other words, even we peons. It's not really what Elrond means. He means it is the time, it's the hour for an ordinary person to do what? To shake the towers and councils of the great. Now, that literally refers to Sauron. Who else, though? Himself. Gandalf. Aragorn. He's saying, if you can't do it, none of us are going to be able to do it. What did Gandalf tell Frodo at the beginning? You must use such strength, wits, and heart as you have. He says it's not a count. It's not on account of your strength and wits that this has been given to you. Why? Because there are a lot of other people with greater strength and wits. What's meant by strength and wits? Who, in this group right here, has a lot of strength? Let's say physical strength. Boromir, man. I mean, this is Schwarzenegger in his prime. Taller. Okay. Who has other kinds of power? Gandalf, Elrond, Glorfindel, etc. What about wits? Wits isn't just smarts. It's not IQ. It's not book learning. It's wisdom. Boromir's not so great at that. Aragorn's good. Okay. Elrond is good. Gandalf is good. When we meet her, Galadriel is good. Okay. So, it's not going to be those. What's it going to be? So, Frodo agrees. What must they do at this point? Or, excuse me, what do they decide to do at this point? So Frodo's going to take the ring and he's going to go down to Mount Doom. Is he going by himself? Why not? Don't put me on the spot. How likely is it he's going to succeed? He's a midget. He's not Boromir, who can travel 110 days by himself. No, he's got to have companions. He's got to have people help him. This is Tolkien saying, you can't do it alone. Nobody can. None of us, I put the other day up on the board, I put, the word dependent. None of us hangs out here on our own, totally, self-existing. So, why are there 9 members of the Fellowship of the Ring? To match the 9 riders. 9 walkers against 9 riders. So, Frodo, who else is next? Automatically. Who jumps up? Sam. The only way you're getting Sam not to go is if you tie him up and lock him in the cellar. So, Frodo and Sam are going. Who else? Who has to head south? Has to. Boromir. He's going back to Minas Tirith. Who has already said, I'm going to Minas Tirith. Aragorn. Who else? Big one. Gandalf. Why? Because this will be his final greatest task. Who else? So who do we have represented? We've got hobbits. We've got these 2. Men. Wizards. Who's not represented of the free people of the West? Elves. Who goes? Legolas. Okay? Who else isn't represented yet? Dwarves. So who goes? Gimli. Why not Glowing? Because he's too old. Okay? So we've got dwarves, elves, wizards, men, hobbits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But there's 9 writers, and we want to have a nice parallelism or a nice balance. So who are we going to get? Who does Elrond think should go? Oh, let's send a Glorfindel. Yeah, mighty elf lord. What does Gandalf say instead? I think you should trust your friendship. Why? Because he says even Glorfindel isn't going to be able to break into the tower. Trust to friendship. Who? Merry and Pippin. Of those two, which one does Elrond really have a problem going? And this is really important. Pippin. Why? Loudmouth? Flighty? He's an airhead, man. There's no other way of putting it. What did he do at Prancing Pony? He got up on the table and started, drinking too much and talking too much. He wants to do what with Pippin? For what reason? To warn the Shire. Now, if he sends him back and warns the Shire, think of what Aragorn said the Rangers do. They keep the people in the Shire, the people in Bree, ignorant of what's going on outside. If Pippin brings that back, he destroys that. Partially. That's part of the problem. Okay? He wants to send it back as a warning. And Gandalf says, trust to friendship. So it's because of Gandalf, ultimately, that Pippin goes. We've got a little over 20 minutes. I think we'll get to this part. So the ring goes south. Boromir blows his horn because he says, I never began a journey without doing that. Elrond essentially, blow your horn elsewhere, buddy. Not in my territory. Because it's like what? It's like sending off a massive flare. Hello, we're all here, Ring goes south. They try to go over Mount Caradlis. Why? It'll be a lot shorter. You can look at it in the maps. And the mountain won't let them. Okay? Chapter 4, Journey in the Dark. So where do they go instead? They go through the mines of Moria. Okay? Back up for just a moment. Who wanted to go over the mountain rather than through the mines of Moria? Specifically, Aragorn. Why? He doesn't like the mines of Moria. The mines of Moria are scary. Okay. So if Aragorn is afraid to go through the mines of Moria, what's that pretty much tell you if you're not an Aragorn? You're a 3-foot-tall midget. I don't want to go through there either. Okay? Who does? Who's just itching to go? Gimli. The mines of Moria are the dwarvish ancestral home. And it's like, going back to Philadelphia, so to speak, for founding of the United States. Right? So Boromir's like, I'm not going. Dude, I heard the story. Boromir, big, manly Boromir. Nope, not unless the vote of the whole company is against me. 8-1. And it pretty much is. Okay. But before they go to the mines of Moria, before they get through the doors, what does Aragorn say to Gandalf? I say to you, Gandalf the Grey, beware. You got an itchy feeling something's going to happen, okay? But they get through. Oh, by the way, when they get to the doors leading into the mines of Moria, you got a drawing in here. There's an inscription. What does it say? Notice, Gandalf can read it. It says, speak, friend, and enter. Speak, friend, and enter. Like, Okay, friend, now that you're here, speak, and the doors will reveal themselves. So Gandalf says something in Dwarvish. Doesn't work. Then he says a whole bunch of things like, damn. And finally, mellow. The doors open. He says, I was thinking all these other things, and I mistranslated. I shouldn't have said, speak, friend, and enter. It should be, say, friend. And the doors will open. Melon means friend. Doors open up. They all start going through. What happens to Frodo? Something in the lake, giant squid-like thing, sends a tentacle out and grabs him by the leg and starts. Notice, it's Frodo. It's nobody else. Why? Ring, trying to get home. They rescue Frodo. They go inside. And that thing with its tentacles grabs those doors, slams them shut so that there is a cave-in on the inside. You ain't getting back out that way. Now they have to go all the way through. Okay? 10:45. So, they get to the guard chamber. Page 313. Big open chamber. And there's a well. And you know it's a well because there's a ring of stones set in mortar around it. Okay? So, Gandalf's going to take the first watch, if I remember correctly. Page 313. Pippin felt curiously attracted by the well. While the others are unrolling blankets, making beds and everything, he creeps over the edge, looks down. He feels kind of a cool breeze come up from it, and he finds a stone. Plunk. And as soon as the plunk, what's that? Gandalf cries. He's relieved when he realizes what Pippin has done. It says, fool of a took, this is a serious journey, not a hobbit walking party. Throw yourself in next time, and then you will be no further nuisance. But notice what he calls him. Fool. Gandalf, of all the characters in the novel, Gandalf uses the word fool the most often. I think there's one other person who does, and I think it's Saruman in talking about Gandalf. I think that's the case. I'm not positive. I'm only like 25% maybe sure. Almost positive Gandalf's the only one who uses it. Okay? So, they continue, and then they suddenly start to hear Gimli. That's the sound of a hammer. I've never heard one. Gandalf. Yep. Pippin woke something up that would have been better left sleeping. Okay? So, they keep going on. This is when they come to the guard room. And they find the tomb of Balin, one of the original dwarves from The Hobbit. Okay? And they find what's called the Black Book of Mazarpool. If you go to the Tolkien room in the Marquette University Library, they've got the manuscripts. The original manuscripts for The Lord of the Rings. They bought them from Tolkien in the late 50s, early 60s for a steal. It was like $10,000. Okay? And Tolkien needed it to pay off the tax debt. Oddly enough. But all the stuff that became The Lord of the Rings, not all the things in the 12-volume Middle Earth, just the Lord of the Rings stuff. And included in that, Tolkien made a mock-up of this book that he's referring to. With the writing, with little stuff that looks like maybe blood smears and burnt edges, so he burnt the edges of the page. All the maps that Tolkien drew, they're all there. So I've actually looked at this, and it's pretty cool. So they read, and what happens? The drums, and they hear the drums. And they're attacked, right? So they escape. Gandalf leaves behind, speaks a spell of power, and we're going to go to Page 329. The Bridge of Khazad-dûm. Okay. After Gandalf closes the door up ahead and makes his way down to where the others are, he says, I'm spent, I had to speak a word of power, etc. And we get to this point where there's land here, and then it drops off over here. And there's a little bridge that goes across. And the bridge is just a single, like maybe 18 inches wide, bridge of stone. Right? And there's trolls and orcs all over. And then they start to flee. And we see, bottom of 329. It came to the edge of the fire, and the light faded as if a cloud had bent over it. Then with a rush, it leaped across the fissure. The flames roared up to greet it and wreathed about it, and a black smoke swirled in the air. Its streaming mane kindled and blazed behind it. In its right hand was a blade like a stabbing tongue of fire. In its left hand it held a whip of many things. We don't know what this thing is till we get to the next page. I wails Legolas, a Balrog, Gimli, Durin's Bane, Gandalf, a Balrog. Now I understand. What an evil fortune, and I am already weary. Guess what? A Balrog is also a Maya, one that serves Sauron. Okay? The things the elves fear the most, really. Gandalf's like, oh, man, I'm already tired. Okay? The dark figure, streams with fire, etc., etc. And Gandalf comes out here, and he stands right here. And the Balrog comes over here, and he's, huge. And Gandalf looks like this frail little thing next to him. And he says, you cannot pass. I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Enor. You cannot pass. The dark fire will not avail you. Flame of Adun, go back to the shadow. You cannot pass. When he says, I'm a servant of the secret fire, the secret fire, that refers to what Iluvatar uses to make the world. Or the power of Iluvatar that makes the world. Some have suggested that's the Holy Spirit in the Christian Trinitarian sense. But it's not of this world, all right? The flame of Enor, that's his sword. Which he got in the Hobbit. You cannot pass. Balrog, notice, doesn't respond. Well, not verbally. It pulls out a sword. So Gandalf pulls out his sword. In other words, you got a sword, it's a big deal. I got one too. There is a ringing clash and a stab of white fire. Notice, not red fire. Red fire is the color of the Balrog. Gandalf's is white. The Balrog fell back, its sword flew up in molten fragments. Gandalf's sword is stronger than the Balrog's sword. The wizard swayed on the bridge, stepped back a pace, and then again stood still. You cannot pass. The Balrog leaps full upon the bridge. It has its whip. Aragorn, he can't stand alone. Aragorn tries to run out to help Gandalf. Gandalf lifts his shaft, cries aloud. He smites the bridge in front of him, like right here. The bridge cracks. The Balrog falls, and what does it do? With its whip, catches his ankle, drags him down, and Gandalf gives us an internet ludicrous theme. Okay? Gandalf says, fly, fly, you fools. The ludicrous internet theme. There are people who think that when Gandalf says, fly, fly, you fools, he's telling them how to get from whence they get out of Moria to Mordor. Call up the Eagles. Can I get the 1-800 number for Gwahir the Wind Lord, and have him fly them to Mordor. Utterly asinine. I mean, you got to be dumber than the tile on this floor to come up with that kind of idea. So, they leave real quickly. And they make their way to Lothlorien. Notice they're also aware now who's been following them. Almost. Gollum. Gollum followed them all the way through Moria. Okay? which Frodo mentions earlier. But now they see him. What must they do to actually get into Lothlorien that Legolas really doesn't like? They have to be blindfolded, right? But they all agree to it. Right? And they get taken before Celeborn and Galadriel. Celeborn, the Lord of Lothlorien, and Galadriel, the Lady of Lothlorien. But really, who, metaphorically, who really wears the pants seemingly in this relationship? Galadriel's the one who comes off as the more powerful. Celeborn, when they're brought before them up in their treehouse, that's literally what it is they live in. Let's see. Page 356. They tell them about Gandalf falling at the bridge of Khazad-dûm. Celeborn says that at the last Gandalf fell from wisdom into folly. At the last, his final moment, he was a fool. And Galadriel not so gently upbraids him. He would be rash indeed that said that thing. Needless were none of the deeds of Gandalf in life. Those that followed him knew not his mind, cannot report his full purpose. However it may be with the guide, the followers are blameless. Notice what she is telling us there, that she heard Celeborn kind of say about those who were just brought before him. And if Gandalf fell in folly or foolishness, it's kind of rubbed off. He's kind of blaming them, and she says, you can't blame any of them. And she says, do not repent of your welcome to the dwarf. What's the thing about dwarves and elves? Think Arabs, Israelis. It goes back thousands of years. Okay? This hatred. And Gimli says, or she says to Gimli, some words about looking on Khazad-dûm, that is on your ancestral homeland. And the dwarf, bottom of 356, hearing the names given in his own ancient tongue, looked up and met her eyes. And it seemed to him that he looked suddenly into the heart of an enemy and saw their love and understanding. Wonder came into his face, and he smiled in answer. Why? What has Gimli just experienced that Tolkien says fairy stories offer us? Recovery. He is seeing Galadriel as she is meant to be seen. She's not an enemy. She's just the opposite. Okay? And he rises and says, yet more fair is the living land of Lorien, and the Lady Galadriel is above all the jewels that lie beneath the earth. Now, that is the highest praise a dwarf can give. Why? Because dwarves love stuff more than anything. Because they're smiths. They're makers. Well, she kind of is an unmade thing. And he looks at her and says, and you far outshine anything. And she kind of comes, I'm going to blush. So, she kind of tests each of them. Boromir says something kind of negative, 358. Aragorn says, don't speak evil of Galadriel. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay? And we get the chapter, The Mirror of Galadriel. 7 minutes, I can do it. She takes Frodo and Sam to her mirror. Think of like a bird bath. It's just a stone bowl with water in it. Okay? She uses it only at certain times when there is a certain star in the sky. Seemingly, at least. And she says, you want to see elf magic? Sam's kind of like, yeah. And so he looks, and what does he see? He sees Frodo lying bound in a tunnel. He sees his father, the old gaffer, being put out of his house and walking down Bagshot Row with all of his belongings. He sees the party tree, the tree under which the birthday party was held, chopped down, and trees being cut down all over the Shire. And what does Sam want to do at that point? Anybody know? go back. He's got to stop all of that from happening. Right? And he says, I wish I had never come here. Page 363. And I don't want to see no more magic. No, I'll go home by the long road with Mr. Frodo, or not at all. That is, we will see our journey to its completion and then go home, or I'll die in the trying. Because he initially says, I got to go home, and she says, you can't. You can't go home alone. You wouldn't have gone home if you hadn't seen this. You don't know that this is what's going to happen. It shows what might be. It doesn't show necessarily what will be. Right? So she asks Frodo, you want to look? And he's like, do you counsel me to? Do you think I should? I don't give any counsel here. Frodo looks. What's he see? He sees the stars. He sees the Eye of Sauron. He sees all kinds of stuff. Okay? What else does he see? Well, he looks at Galadriel. And what does he see? He offers her the ring. You are beautiful and wise. Will you not take the ring? And she says, instead of Sauron, you would have a dark lady. You would have a queen. She puts her hands up in the air, and that's when Frodo notices something. She's wearing a ring. And she says, yes. Now you know. Frodo, why didn't I know before? She says, because you didn't know how it works. But to one who bears the ring, that individual can see all the minds. If one tries, don't try. You're not strong enough. So now he knows where one of the 3 elven rings is. What else does he see? He sees the star Eärendil. Okay? And that's what kind of lights the water. So that in the next chapter, we get farewell to Lorien. Galadriel gives everybody gifts, right? What'd she give Boromir? A big old WWF belt buckle. That's essentially what it is. Okay? They all get cloaks. They all get cloaks with the elven breeches. Okay? What does Sam get? The special thing for Sam. Little box of dirt. And rope. The box of dirt contains dirt from Lothlorien. She says, 1 grain of dirt with each thing you plant. And it'll grow like, this is Miracle Grow on steroids. Right? What does she give Aragorn? A scabbard for his sword, because the sword drawn out of that scabbard will never break. Remember the sword broke before? Right? She gives Legolas a new bow and arrow, But what did she give Frodo? He's got a little vial that he wears around his neck. It's a little glass jar, and in it is water from Galadriel's mirror. Water and light. The light is from the star of Eärendil. Okay? And then they all get, the limbus, multi-grain bars, for camping and backpacking and such. So they leave Lorien. They make the way down the Great River, and we're not going to finish. We're going to come so close to finish. To the breaking of the fellowship. We're going to stop there. We're not going to get into that chapter. So for Tuesday, I know, really, really unfair of me. Try to get through the first half of Two Towers. All of book 3, in other words. Okay? Remember, there's a quiz due tonight, 11:59. I think most of you have taken it, or most of the people in one of my classes have already taken it. And we'll spend, probably 20 minutes on the last chapter of Fellowship of the Ring, and then try to do the first half of Two Towers. I think we'll be able to do that. Have a good weekend. Stay safe.